Okay, welcome back to another episode of Third and 23. I'm your host, Alex, here to bring you another off-season video as we continue to march towards the NFL and college football season. We got an NFL video on tap for you in this one. This is going to be about overhyped fantasy football picks that I see coming into this season. You also got another gambling angle to it, right? If you're the type of person that does prop bets, you do futures prop bets. These are guys that I would definitely look to do unders on, depending on what those prop bets are. But this video is going to be more geared towards the fantasy football angle. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start things off with Jackson Smith and Jigba, a guy that I've seen it talked about in the same vein out there in the ether. So a lot of people are on this train and they think that there's going to be a regression. Right now, JSN's ADP, if you're looking at mock drafts, he's coming in at 30th. That's so it's right there at the beginning of the fourth round. That might be a little high, depending on what kind of that might be a little high depending on what kind of league you're in, right? 10, 12, 14. Because you might not get the bang for the buck depending on depending on if you're drafting him that early. So let's look at what he did last season. 100 catches, 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns last season. Led the team in catches. Led the team in targets with 137 targets last season, despite the fact that DK Metcalf is the number one wide receiver option for the team. DK Metcalf is gone. Tyler Lockett gone. So now the wide receiver room looks like JSN, Cooper Kupp, who I believe is not lost a step, but lost 2, and then Marquez Valdes-Scantling, MVS, who's never really been much more than a guy out there, right? It's important to note that last season, JSN, 81% of his snaps came from the slot. That's something important to note. We're going to talk about it here in a second. And then his average depth of target was 8.7. You compare that with DK Metcalf, that's 13.1. So that means that JSN is working in the slot, 100 catches, 1,100 yards, catching a lot of underneath stuff. Now we move on to the current situation. DK and Tyler are gone. I already mentioned it's going to be Cooper Kupp and MVS helping him out. That to me sounds like there's going to be double coverage on JSN this upcoming season. He's going to be the number one target. Sam Darnold's also, we know Sam Darnold's replacing Geno Smith at quarterback. So now you got a downgrade at quarterback. You got a downgrade at other options around him, right? About the supporting cast. To me, that already spells regression. Then you look at the scheme. So Clint Kubiak is a new offensive coordinator, and he runs mainly 2 wide receiver sets. If you look at the percentages, I believe he runs 2 wide receiver sets 60 to 65% of the time. So if you're going to get into, technical terms, that's an X and a Z. There's no Y. Y is your slot receiver. So now that means JSN, he's got to play on the outside. JSN, 81% of his snaps from the slot last season. If you remember JSN at Ohio State, majority of his snaps came from a slot. So this is going to be something new. Is he the type of guy that can beat press coverage as an X receiver? I just don't like how this wide receiver room is constructed because I don't think he is. I don't think Cooper Kupp is the type of guy who can beat press coverage on the outside. Cooper Kupp and JSN are essentially the same player they play the same position. And MVS is just a guy. He's a guy that's not going to beat press coverage on the outside. Let's be honest about that. So I don't think I have a true X on the outside, and that's going to hurt everyone in the receiver room because that means everybody's going to be playing out of position. So JSN beating press coverage on the outside is not something that I believe is going to happen. And then consider the fact that he's going to be double covered, I believe, for the majority of the season. That's also going to spell into a regression. And then lastly, Sam Darnold. I just think I'm not a big Geno Smith guy, but he's better than Sam Darnold. So for me, JSN, I think that's going to be at 30th. That's way too high. That's way too high for me. I wouldn't take JSN that early in the draft. Moving on to our next fade for this upcoming season, as I believe is one Alvin Kamara, veteran running back. Alvin Kamara been around forever. His ADP is coming in right now at 38th. Let's take a look at Alvin. He's going to turn 30 before the season starts. He's entering his 9th year as a starter. Now, you guys, if you follow football, you already know 30 years old and for a running back in the NFL history usually doesn't spell or usually spells doom for that running back, right? But you can also say, well, Alvin Kamara he is coming off his most productive season rushing the ball. He ran for 950 yards last season. But that says something about Alvin Kamara, man. 950 yards is your career high, and you've started 8 years. We all know he's an all-purpose back, but still, 950 last season is career high, and now he's gonna top 1,000 at 30 years old if he's never done it before? I don't see that. And then you throw in the fact that Alvin Kamara, he misses multiple. He's never had a major injury, but he misses multiple games a year. He's missed multiple games a year for at least the last 5 seasons. So expect that trend to continue. And then we look at Alvin Kamara. Now you look at declining production. So I mentioned, yeah, he ran for 950, but take a look at this. Over the first 4 years in his career, he averaged 14 and a half touchdowns a season. Over his last 4 years starting, 6.75 touchdowns. His yards, in that same vein, his yards per touch dropped from 6.28 to 4.8. His receiving, because he's an all-purpose back, his receiving, 46.8 to 35.3. So you can already see the decline has been happening for Alvin Kamara, despite the fact that he ran for 950 last season. To me, I think the bottom's about to fall out, especially when he's turning 30 years old. Then let's look at the 2025 outlook. If you guys are paying attention, the Saints are projected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. I believe they're going to be drafted in the top 3 in this upcoming season, or in the 2026 NFL draft. Kellen Moore's the new head coach. If you look at the numbers, he prefers a balanced inside and outside run scheme. The Saints last season ran the ball 69.8% to the out, 69.8% of the time they ran to the outside. That led the league. 27.8% of the time, or 27.9% of the time they ran inside. That was last in the league. So that goes counter to what Kellen Moore likes to do. And now are you going to say 30-year-old Alvin Kamara, who's never ran for 1,000 yards in a season, now he's going to run it up the gut? Well, I don't know about that one. And then when you look at Kellen Moore's scheme as well, or his philosophy and his tendencies as well, at no time has Kellen Moore been a play caller in the NFL. Let me rephrase that. Kellen Moore, as a play caller in the NFL, has never ran the ball into stacked boxes more than 20% of the time. It's always been less than 20% of the time. Why is that important? The Saints are going to be starting a rookie quarterback more than likely in Tyler Shough. They got a receiver group that with all sorts of issues. Chris Olave with the concussions. Rashid Shaheed, one-trick pony. Brandon Cooks is at the end of his career. So what that tells me is there's going to be stacked boxes for the Saints. And Kellen Moore doesn't like to run into stacked boxes. So I think the Saints are actually going to pass the ball more than maybe people might think with rookie Tyler Shough. And that's going to lower Alvin Kamara's value in this upcoming season. So for me, Alvin Kamara, strong fade. 38th, that's crazy to me. Personally, I got him on my do not draft list. But if you're out there and you're looking to draft Alvin Kamara, I would definitely draft him much later in the draft because you're going to get more value and production from some other running backs. And lastly, third player, and I know there's going to be a lot of consternation with this one because people think I'm talking about the brother when I'm talking about Bo Nix. Look, I'm just not a Bo Nix guy. Okay, I'm just not a Bo Nix guy. His ADP right now is 70th because, as you know, quarterbacks get drafted later. But he's clocking in right now as a top 10 quarterback as far as ADP goes, and that to me is crazy. That to me is crazy. All right, you look at Bo Nix's rookie season: 29 touchdowns, 3,775 yards passing. Sounds good. 6.7 yards per attempt. That's not good, but okay, he was a rookie. But here's the thing. And I've talked about this in other videos when I'm talking about the Broncos, when I talk about how I believe the Broncos are going to regress. In Week 18, when the Broncos got an easy path into the playoffs, the Kansas City Chiefs benched their starters. They had a bunch of backups and reserves in the game. Bo Nix had 4 touchdowns and 11.1 yard per attempt in that game. When you take those numbers out, now he's 25 for 3,000, about 3,500 yards. And his wide yards per attempt, 6.4. That's dead last in the NFL. His completed air yards per attempt, 3, dead last or near last. I think it was 30th. His air yards per completion, 4.5, dead last in the NFL. Everything about Bo Nix last season is check down Charlie's, check down machine, heavy check down tendency. That's what he's doing. Maybe it's not all on him because when you look at the receiver room, as I've mentioned this before, Cortland Sutton doesn't scare me. Marvin Mims, he's got wheels, but Marvin Mims isn't a guy who's going for 1,200. Some mediocre wide receiver core. Then you need balance, right? You need balance to take the pressure off of Bo Nix, open up play action, make things easier for him throwing down the field. It's an uninspiring running back room. You got J.K. Dobbins. Let's be honest, the Achilles injury robbed him of what he could have been. And then you got an undersized R.J. Harvey from UCF coming in, who just don't know if he can consistently do it in the NFL. I don't think he can. And then I believe that the defense is, I've mentioned this before, I think the defense is going to regress because that's just what you see in the NFL. That's a trend. When you have a top defense, normally you see a regression the next year. So that means if you're going to have a defense that's going to regress, Bo Nix is going to have to step up and fill that void, right? Because the defense is what got them to the playoffs last year. And he's going to step up with his mediocre wide receivers. They still got Cortland Sutton as the number one. He's going to step up with these running backs that he's got, R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. I don't believe it. And the fact that he's a check down machine, I don't believe it. I don't see it. I don't think this is a top 10 quarterback in fantasy. I don't think it's a top 10 quarterback in reality. This ADP is way too high for Bo Nix. I wouldn't even draft Bo Nix personally. So if you do, hey, good luck to you. But that's high risk to me and probably low reward. But anyway, that wraps it up. So I'll give you 3 players that I'm looking to fade, or I'm not necessarily fade. Well, fade statistically, but fade in as far as fantasy football goes, as far as the fantasy draft goes. And if you agree, disagree, let me know in the comments. And feel free to like, comment, and subscribe as you're going to continue to get more off-season videos as we continue to push towards the start of the football season. I can't wait. But anyways, take care.